Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on May 25th, 2022 at approximately 9:47 a.m. PST. Things have gotten a little bit different as per usual. I've had to make some definitive changes, but before I get into it, okay, first and foremost, I returned to this world, to this lifetime, at this time, for one primary purpose, and that is to let people know, to remind everyone in existence, that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Okay, now with that said, the tools that I offer here are the same ones I personally use, and the philosophies of life that I talk about are ones that I personally live my life by. It is extremely important you realize that whatever I'm about to say, whatever I say in the next half hour, or for that matter, whenever I'm on the computer or talking to somebody in person, whatever I say is absolutely my opinion. This does not necessarily mean it is factually, absolute, especially where certain techniques come in. But the tools I use are the ones that I personally use. Now, I'm and that said, if you like the video, give us a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel, as we've got a lot of information coming out. Okay. And absolutely, please share it with everybody. The idea is to get this message out to everyone, not just that has computers, but everyone in existence, every entity, meaning animal, vegetable, mineral, energy pattern, the whole 9 yards. Okay, because we are all connected. Now, when I was growing up, things were a lot simpler in a lot of ways. And no, I'm not that old. I was born in '63. But I'm finding something rather disturbing. Okay. Now, I've had to make some adjustments. The first and foremost, the Sunday live feed I was going to be doing, I've decided to shut it down. Okay, I tried squeezing it in. It isn't going to work. However, I will be running Saturday morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time. Now, that being said, not only will we be talking about fear and what it can do to you, how it can turn things completely upside down in your world, but we're going to deal with that head on today as well. And the thing to keep in mind is this: there are a lot of people. If I go back, and I'm doing my best to remember this, roughly a decade ago, my research basically pointed out that the average IQ was, and I shouldn't call it research, it was a blurb that came up from a professional company on Facebook that stated that 10 years ago, the average IQ was 100 to 120. Now, I've long held that people's intelligence is dropping. Well, about 3, maybe 4 months back, there was a statement that came out, tied to this, that says that the average intelligence, the average IQ of people at this point is about 85. Now, this is a disturbing trend. See, and I'm gonna stick my foot in it, but do understand, this is simply an observation that I've noticed. Observation or things that have been passed on to me. Apparently, there is somebody over in the Middle East that is making claims that we no longer require humans because we've got work and we've got robots to do all this work. Now, much as that's a cute thought, you really have to question exactly how well that works. Because bear in mind, I'm assuming that whoever said this was not a robot. Okay, which means if you think about it, if all humans are gone, well, we can safely say the human civilization is done for. Okay. Besides that, the reality is there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of ramifications there. But the thing that frightens me is the fact that this individual is gaining ground and more people are looking at it that way. Now, regardless of how big a movement this is, it's a problem in my eyes. The other one that I find absolutely disturbing, okay, when I was growing up, I went, I took my standard sciences and what have you, and there were only two genders, only two. You either had male or you had female, and they were a physical thing. Okay, they were not indicative of who you were crawling into bed with. They were simply a physical. You're either male or female. Okay, you could be male depressed. You could be female depressed. There were a whole lot of mental states, but there was only two. Okay, once in a while you'd get the unfortunate child that was born hermaphroditic, meaning both sets of organs. Okay, but they were never classified as a gender. Okay, an individual I know sent me a current ticket stub that showed on it where it asked for the gender. There were 52 options, and that stopped at the letter T. To my way of thinking, there's lots of mental states. Okay, there really are. But this idea that there are 52 genders in the human genome is a massive problem. Okay, and it's not something that's functionally open to a debate, although, well, it shouldn't have been, but apparently it's becoming that way. Okay, now, things are, the theory was that as technology came out, that things would get a little bit simpler. Unfortunately, what's happened is the amount of fear that is being broadcast all over the place. Okay, we take a look at religion that is supposed to be a unified front, a place to bring people together. And yet, there are so many fractured sections of the different religions. And again, and I've mentioned this before, look it up on the internet. Just a few days ago, I looked it up myself. Okay, and it turns out the Christian faith that is supposed to be talking about loving everybody equally, being all for taking care of the poor, taking care of the sick. I think there were 55 different, 45,000 different denominations. Now, I will tell you this. If you take that kind of a unified body and you break it into little itty bitty bits and pieces, you are not unified. Okay. When you're looking at, at gender, if you're breaking it into that many genders, number one, you look at it, you've got to start looking at it and go, does this make practical sense? Okay. On its current path, you're going to end up with people that are, that are male or, any one of these 52 genders. Okay, but they're no longer just that gender. Now we're going to start adding in, well, this is a gender. You now are male, but you believe in UFOs. That's a new gender. Or you're now female and you believe in the earth being flat. That's a new gender. This is quite frankly, this is a ridiculous state of the segregation that's happening now. Okay, at least in my opinion. It's the same with the religions. They're breaking apart. Society was supposed to be getting more stabilized, more unified. Well, it frankly isn't. Okay. And we have this neat little problem where if people don't start realizing that, when I was going to school, if somebody had a peanut allergy, the individual with peanut allergy was taught how to deal with it. The educators were taught how to deal with it, and the parents were. Everybody else was, quite often the ones close to the individual with the allergy were told they've got an allergy. Okay, same as with the bee allergy. But when my eldest was in school 20 years, be 10 years ago now. No, 5 years. But one child, in probably 10 years back, because he was in elementary school, one child came up with a kiwi allergy. And instead of teaching the kid to stay away from kiwis, they told everybody in the school, you can't bring kiwi to school. Okay. The problem is you cannot alter society effectively by taking into consideration every minor individual change and difference. It just will not work. Okay, and I'm seeing this becoming more and more of a problem. Okay, but society is backing this up, and it's not the big media, it's not the pharmaceutical companies, and it's not somebody with a whole pile of money. This is the individual. This is you, the individual. Maybe not you specifically. I used to think like you did, that all this segregation was because of the major medias until the social network came out. When things like Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn popped up, amongst multitudinous other ones. Okay, and I started seeing the posts going on. The sad part of it is when those posts came out, what I found was, although I'm a firm believer that a good 90-95% of you are really decent people and really are genuinely interested in getting along. Okay, that unfortunately that leaves you 5, maybe 10% that are just naturally miserable, and maybe it's a condition, maybe it's a choice. I don't know. Okay, what I do know is that most of what comes out on the net is who's causing a war where, who's ripping who off, who's murdering who. Okay, there is so much fear going around. Okay, now yes, the media is certainly pumping it out. Okay, but I used to question why they were doing it. I'm thinking like nobody can want that kind of negative stuff. But the thing is this. Okay, given the option, and like I'm not saying don't report the negative stuff. What I'm saying is minimize the negative and maximize the positive. If you've got, for instance, a murder that takes place, psychologists have already determined that many times the perpetrators of these crimes are simply looking for attention. Well, frankly, plastering their face all over the front page and going, look at what this criminal did, is giving them that attention. Absolutely report it. Okay, but it needs to go to the back. It's got to go to the back of the paper. Like when I'm looking at the post, I will not retweet. I won't retweet or repost anything that is saying, here's a chunk of war, here's a chunk of, you know, here's a thing of somebody ripped somebody off. And this idea that people have, where I see constant ads of people going, these are pictures that the individuals involved would not want seen on the net. But take a look at them. Now you think about that. Okay. The people that are posting these are deliberately embarrassing other people for no other reason than to get likes on their video, on their channel or something. Okay. Or on the post that they've got. And from what I gather, where it comes to Facebook and the like, the number of likes you get is something that does get taken into their calibration. But you got to remember, in their case, they're advertising. And the more people they can get to see things, the better off the more effective the advertising is. So what we have to realize as a society, I only follow 3 karmic laws. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Energy out, energy in. Okay, now this is the way I live my life. Okay, and if you look at the laws that you follow or the guidelines you follow, what I do believe you will find is that all of the laws that you follow fit inside those 3 that I follow. I've got the advantage in this case, in my opinion. I only have to remember 3. But the thing is, this is a question of we have to work together to make this happen. The tide of society is not going to shift if only one person is doing the work. It's kind of like trying to change the direction that the river's flowing by getting one droplet to move. Okay, this is the thing we have to realize, is when you're looking at things that are bombarding you with fear, the religions and spiritual guides that are out there, most of them are literally turning around and going, fear God, fear your creator, fear Allah, whatever name you want to call, fear Gaia. Fear, fear, fear. This is great if you're trying to get people to panic. Okay, it really is. But if you're trying to make society work more effectively, or if that's your goal, then propagating fear and telling everybody, fear this, but follow it. Okay, now I don't know about you. I grew up in a home where my parents were very loving. Did I ever fear them? No. Could they? Were they big enough to cause problems? Certainly. I mean, you take a look at me. Me personally, I'm 5'8", right? And I'm quite happy to say I am now down to 202.4 pounds as of yesterday morning. Okay. Now, the neat part about it, sorry, that is not as of yesterday morning, that is as of this morning. Now, for me, that is the lightest I've been in that's the lightest I've been in probably 15 years. For those of you in Canada that think in metric, because frankly, sorry, I still think in standard, which is where the 202 comes. But I did check it out. That puts me at just shy of 92 kilo. Okay. And just out of curiosity, if we go here, we were at our worst 246, which was 111. So we have dropped just shy of 20 kilo. Okay. And if I remember correctly, if I remember the English conversion right, I believe that is, the old version I knew it before. I wonder if we've actually got this. We do. Okay. Another old measurement that I thought it was 20, but apparently a stone is 14 pounds, which means that frankly, I'm 17 and a half stone. Well, I used to be 17 and a half stone. Okay. But at this point, I'm down to just under 14 and a half stone. So, if somebody, I would love somebody to tell me whether stone is still what the English over in Great Britain use. Okay. The point being, I decided I was dropping weight, and with the guidance of other people. Okay. With the guidance of some medical professions and professionals and people working in certain industries. Okay, utilizing their input, I've managed to drop this weight in roughly a year. Okay. Now, I'm quite content with that. I think it was June of last year is when I really started checking it. Okay. But that's when I actively started dropping the weight. And now I'm down to almost my goal for the end of the year. But I could live here and I could sit here and go, oh, I'm afraid I'm not going to make my goal. And there's many of you that will get very close to the break point. You'll set a goal for yourself, but because somebody else says you're not good enough, you don't have the capacity to do that, you give up. Okay, well, right here, right now, is the only time you can make things change. Okay, even if you postpone it like I used to. Even if you postpone whatever you're aiming at doing until, next week, when you get around to doing it, you're right here, right now. And you're the only person in existence that can alter the path you're on, that can be successful for you. Absolutely, turn to others for guidance. Okay, do I personally go to doctors a lot? Absolutely not. Okay, but do I take their information? Absolutely. And one thing that the medical profession has come out with, okay, the best diet I ever came across was not these silly pills that drop 40 pounds in a month. To me, that's absolutely devastating. Now, I got no medical background to give you a definitive issue on that. But when it seems to be, as I did take biology in school, very little, but I did manage to get through the anatomy section. And it seems to me if you're dropping weight, your liver and your kidneys are going to be working overtime to clear that toxin out. This is where dropping 40 pounds in a month could be a problem, in my eyes. Personally, I've always looked at it that if I'm losing a pound to a pound and a half a week, in other words, 4 to 6 pounds a month, it's a good pace. I'm not suffering in the way of health. I'm still moving quite nicely. Okay. So, from that standpoint, talk to people that have been there successfully before. The tools I talk about are ones I personally use. This is why I know that aiming at a month to month, at a pound to a pound and a half a week, 4 pounds to 6 pounds in a month, seems to be a good, stable drop where I haven't had to lose out on anything. I've been able to eat what I desire. I've been able to carry on living the way I choose and moving forward. Okay. Now, from your standpoint, it really boils down to, you have to take a look at things and ask yourself one little question. Are you content with the way your life is running right this moment? If not, that's where this fine little list that I keep showing you. This is the list of what I'm working on right now. Now, I would have had this video out earlier, but I ran into a snag. Just as I went, like 5 minutes after I started recording, the fire alarm in my apartment block went off. Turned out the back half of the building was on fire. But, with that in mind, we turned around. Everybody, we got out fine, what have you. But it did create an interesting situation, which is why I ended up doing this a little later. Yes, I'm pulling stuff out of my pocket because it's annoying me. And what I ended up doing when the fire hit was grabbing a whole pile of zip drives that I had plugged into my computer. And tearing them off my computer. I left the computer behind, but took the data with me so I could actually function, so I didn't lose the data. Which now puts me in the situation of just a reiteration for myself to make sure I get the current stuff done. But this is a situation where when you're living in fear, you're told fear everything around you. Fear whatever. If you don't do exactly what you're told, you're going to be punished. You're also told to fear change. Okay, because change is difficult, change is scary, change is hard. Bad news or good news, depending on how you look at it. If you're listening to me right now, first of all, if you're listening to me right now, thank you very much. But every time I say a different word, change is happening. Now, assuming you're not writhing on the floor in agony because of the change, we can safely say that change is not as scary and as frightening as you might think, and it's not as painful. Now, of course, my image may be frightening to you. Lord knows I don't look at myself in the mirror, but when I'm doing these recordings, I certainly do. Not in the mirror, but you get the idea. Change is the one consistency in existence. But what you've got to realize is that fearing it does not help. Okay, and we can safely say, you're told if you don't do things the same way, you're not going to have any friends. So people are constantly, and I don't blame just the teachers, I don't blame the parents. This is an issue of these thought processes have been being propagated for literally millennia. So these thought processes are not going to change overnight. But I do strongly encourage you, when you're going to repost something, if it is talking about telling you to fear everything, if it's talking about who ripped who off, who murdered who, what country is bombing which one, don't get me wrong, these are pieces of information that are necessary. But work out your ratios. My personal suggestion would be every time you post something about war or about degradation, that sort of thing, find 2 or 3 things, preferably 3, that are positive. For every one negative you put out 3 positive. This will give a solid foundation for a positive transition from negative perspective to positive. And the thing is, like I heard a native one day put it this way. They were taught, a North American Indian, they were taught that every child is born with 2 dogs, one of hate and one of love. Okay, or one of fear and one of acceptance. And the child asks the parent, "Well, which dog wins? Which one is the stronger?" And the parent looks at them and goes, "Whichever one you feed." In other words, if you're constantly surrounding yourself with negativity, if you're constantly surrounding yourself with depravity, with things that make you feel bad or make you feel less competent, then it's that kind of self-destructive outlook on yourself that is going to take dominant control. Okay. If, on the other hand, you surround yourself with positive music, positive information, things like I watched a video clip the other day that was showing some people going to some phenomenal efforts to actually help animals and help other people. Absolutely imperative. Okay. That sort of thing I just love. Okay. The ones that people send that talk about, here's the war, what do you think of the war? Well, what I think of war is it's totally it's totally overstated. War has never, in my opinion, ever brought peace. It brings quiet, but it does not bring peace. Okay. But if you're living in a world where you're afraid of everything, and many of you have mental overloads that really, some people would call you paranoid. And for pity's sakes, this is critical. If you're on some sort of medication to help you deal with a shortfall on the way you're able to process things, if you're on that medication, stay on it. Okay. Work with the tools I've been talking about, but stay on the medication until it works out. Because as your body changes, as your mindset changes, your body will discard the excess and the doctor will figure out what's an overload. Okay, in most cases. Okay. But when you're living in a world that you are constantly bombarding yourself with fear, you're bound to get depressed. Okay, now the first rule of thumb from my standpoint is simple. If all you're seeing is depressing stuff that makes you feel bad or makes you worry about the future, okay, understand we were given free will, regardless of what religion you follow or what spiritual path you're on. Virtually every one of them says you were given free will. It is up to you. It is up to all of us working together to change this world for effectively the better. Now, With that in mind, I will be back again tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.